Think about, the change you've got jingling in your pocket. Pennies, nickels, maybe a dollar coin if you're lucky.
Hmm.
Ever stop to think if making those little metal discs actually costs the U.S. more than they're well worth?
That's exactly the question we're digging into today. The economics behind producing cents, nickels, and even dollar coins are, well, they're pretty surprising.
Yeah.
And especially now, with the Mint planning to stop making pennies by early 2026, it's super relevant to understand the real costs and, what happens next.
Right. I mean, the big questions are, will stopping the penny actually save money? What about the nickel? That one's got cost issues too, right?
Definitely.
And could getting rid of the penny somehow lead to, like, inflation,
Hmm.
higher prices?
Oh,
So
yeah.
our mission here is to really unpack the numbers, look at the sources, and figure out what this all means for you.
Okay, let's get into it. The concept we need to grasp first is something called negative seigniorage. Fancy term. But
Yeah.
basically,
It costs more to make than it's worth.
exactly. The production cost is higher than the face value. And the latest numbers, the 2024 data, they really show how extreme this is for some coins.
Okay, lay it on us. How bad is it?
Well, for 2024, get this, making a single penny costs 0.0369 cents.
Oh. So almost 4 cents for every 1 cent coin.
Yeah, nearly 4 times its value. And the nickel, it's not much better. That costs 0.1378 cents to produce.
Nearly 14 cents for a 5-cent coin.
So-
That's almost triple.
It is. It really makes you question the efficiency, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But what about the dollar coin? You mentioned that one too.
Okay. The dollar coin is interesting. The cost there varies a bit, maybe between 8 and 18 cents, roughly.
So I'm at 8, the everyday...
Somewhere in that range, yeah.
Right.
But the key thing is, it's always less than its $1 face value.
Okay, so that one actually makes money for the government, in a sense, unlike the penny and nickel.
Right. It generates positive seigniorage. It highlights just how inefficient the penny and nickel production has become.
And this isn't exactly new, is it? We've been losing money on these for a while.
Oh, yeah. This isn't a recent blip. Pennies and nickels have been costing more to make than they're worth since way back in 2006.
Wow, since 2006.
Mm-hmm. And if you look just at the fiscal year 2024, the combined loss from minting those two coins was about $103 million.
$103 million. Just gone.
Pretty much. Think about what that kind of money could fund instead. It really puts the cost into perspective.
So pennies and nickels are losing propositions, but the government does make money on other currency.
Yes, exactly. Like we said with the dollar coin. And it's the same for paper money, your dollar bills, 5, 10s, etc.
The printing cost is less than the value.
Right. That positive seigniorage helps offset some of those losses from the penny and nickel production. But it's still a significant drain.
Okay, so why are they so expensive to make? What's actually in these coins?
Good question. The materials are key. Let's start with the penny. Since 1982, it's mostly zinc.
Zinc. I always thought it was copper.
It used to be mostly copper before 82. Now it's about 97.5% zinc, with just a thin copper plating on the outside. It weighs about 2.5 grams.
Ah, okay. Why did they switch? Was copper getting too expensive?
Bingo. Back in the early 80s, the value of the copper in the penny actually became worth more than 1 cent.
So people could melt them down for profit.
Exactly. People were doing that. So switching to zinc was a cost-saving measure to stop the melting and bring the material cost down below face value, at least for a while.
Makes sense. And the nickel, you said that was mostly copper too.
Uh-huh. The nickel is 75% copper and 25% nickel. It's heavier, about 5 grams. Quick history note.
Yeah.
During World War II, they actually made war nickels with silver in them
Silver. Why?
to save the copper and nickel for, the war effort, military supplies and all that.
Interesting. Okay, and the dollar coin, that feels different, heavier.
It is. It's got a core of pure copper, but it's clad, or layered, with manganese brass on the outside. Weighs about 8.1 grams.
Manganese brass, okay.
Yeah, that combo gives it that golden color, makes it durable, and it's also harder to counterfeit.
So these raw materials, zinc, copper, nickel, their prices bouncing around on the world market. That's a huge driver of the production cost.
Absolutely critical. When the price of zinc, copper, or nickel goes up globally, the mint pays more, and the cost to make the coins goes up. That big jump in penny cost in 2024, over 20%,
Yeah.
largely driven by rising zinc prices. It's a direct link.
So it's different from paper money costs then?
Totally different pressure. With paper money, the costs are more about the specialized paper, the ink, those complex security features like watermarks and threads, and the actual printing process, less tied to volatile commodity prices.
Okay, got it. So let's circle back to the big news. The penny production is stopping by early 2026. Why now?
Well, it really boils down to those costs we've been talking about. It's just been costing way too much for way too long. Plus, there was a directive from President Trump specifically looking to cut government spending, and the penny was an obvious target.
So the headline number is savings, right? How much are they expecting to save?
The Mint is projecting annual savings of about $56 million. That's what they expect to save just in the materials and the actual minting process itself once they stop making pennies.
56 million. Sounds good, but is it that simple? Just pocket the savings?
Well, probably not quite that simple. There's the issue of fixed costs.
What do you mean, like the buildings and machines?
Exactly. The Mint has facilities, equipment, administrative staff. Those costs don't just vanish when you stop one production line.
Okay.
So those overhead costs will likely get spread across the remaining coins, dimes, quarters, nickels, dollar coins.
Meaning it might cost a tiny bit more to make those other coins now?
That's the potential wrinkle, yes. There was actually a report, I think, by Navigant Consulting that warned about this. They suggested that reallocating these fixed costs could actually eat into those penny savings, maybe even, in a worst-case scenario, lead to a net loss if other production doesn't get more efficient.
Huh. Okay, so the penny is going. What does that mean for the nickel? We already know it costs, what, nearly 14 cents to make a 5-cent coin?
Right, and this is where it gets potentially tricky for you, the consumer, and for the Mint. Once the penny's gone, the nickel becomes the smallest coin for cash.
So we'll need more nickels for making change.
That's the expectation. Demand for nickels is likely to go up, maybe significantly, because it'll be the go-to for rounding and small change.
And if we're already losing almost 9 cents on every nickel we make, making more of them sounds like losing more money overall.
Precisely. That potential $56 million saving from the penny, it could get wiped out or even reversed if nickel production skyrockets and we're still losing that much on each one.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's why the Treasury is reportedly actively looking for ways to make the nickel cheaper.
Change what it's made of, like they did with the penny.
That seems like the most likely path.
Yeah.
They're probably experimenting with different metal alloys, trying to find something cheaper than the current copper-nickel blend that still works as a coin, durability, counterfeit resistance, etc., trying to get that cost below 5 cents. So a new nickel might be coming down the line too. Okay, let's talk about the practical side for people paying cash. No pennies means rounding, right? How's that going to work?
Yep, rounding to the nearest 5 cents for cash totals. So if your bill is, say, $15.02, you'd likely pay $15. If it's $15.03, probably still $15. But if it's $15.04 or $15.05,
Then it rounds up to $15.05.
probably, yes. That seems to be the common practice where this has been done. But crucially, this is only for cash. If you pay with a card, digitally.
Still the exact amount. $15.02 is $15.02.
Exactly. No rounding for electronic payments.
Now, I've heard people worry about this being like a hidden tax, a rounding tax, the idea that stores will just round up more often.
Yeah, that concern has been raised.
Yeah.
An economist named Lombra argued that years ago, suggesting prices ending in 0.99 would mean more rounding up. Sounds logical, maybe?
Right.
But more recent studies haven't really borne that out. There was a research looking at convenience store data, for example, by Robert Wapples. And maybe more importantly, we can look at other countries.
Canada?
Exactly. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, others. They've already gotten rid of their smallest coins. And the experience there suggests the long-term impact on inflation is negligible.
So sometimes you round down, sometimes you round up, and it just evens out over time.
That seems to be the consensus, yeah. Across millions of transactions, it tends to balance out. Plus, think about how many payments are digital now anyway.
Good point. Fewer cash transactions overall.
Right. So the impact of cash rounding is probably less significant than it might have been, say, 20 years ago. The bottom line from the evidence seems to be we shouldn't expect a big jump in inflation just because the penny's gone.
Okay, that's somewhat reassuring. What about those dollar coins again? We know they're cheap to make compared to their value. Could they become more popular now?
It's definitely an interesting thought. They are cost-effective, like we said, and they last way longer than paper dollar bills.
True, bills get worn out pretty fast.
Yeah. So with the penny going and the nickel maybe facing changes or scrutiny because of its cost, perhaps there's an opening, a renewed push to get people to actually use dollar coins more. It could be a practical alternative.
So wrapping this up then, making pennies and nickels costs taxpayers a lot. Been that way for ages. Getting rid of the penny might save some money, maybe $56 million, but...
But the increased need for nickels, which are also costly to make, could eat up those savings or worse, unless they change the nickel.
Right. And rounding cash transactions, probably not going to cause major inflation based on what we've seen elsewhere.
Seems unlikely, yeah.
So the real issue is this tension. Like the cost of making these little coins versus how much we actually need them, especially with digital payments growing.
That's the core economic challenge right there, balancing cost and utility in a changing payment world.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. As the penny fades away and the nickel's future looks a bit uncertain, could this finally be the moment for the dollar coin? Will we start seeing more of those? And what does all this really signal about the future of physical cash itself? Maybe next time you handle change, just think about the journey that coin took and the economics behind it.